Welcome everyone to the Legal Coaches Association's first event on using AI-assisted legal research to build an efficient legal coaching practice. Many thanks to Mekush Law for hosting us and to Alexi for sponsoring and participating in this event.
With that, I just want to start by centering our conversation today about legal coaching and about how we use these tools around that client. And if you're a legal professional in this room, you've had that client. If you're not, you know somebody who is that client. They have a lower complexity legal problem, right? Maybe it's a small claims case, they're doing their first will, some family matters, residential tenancy stuff, the list goes on. You know what we're talking about. They're lower complexity legal issues, and they're looking for some legal help. They're looking for lower cost legal help for their lower complexity legal issue. And what do you do first, right? They try to find a lawyer. So they're Googling around and they're Googling low cost legal help or free legal help, something like that. And if they're lucky, they found someone that they have an appointment with, maybe in a week or two. They go to the office, they have a chat, 15-minute call or whatever it's going to be. And then that lawyer is probably telling them one of two things. Either, I'm sorry, this isn't my scope, I can't help you, or I can help you, but it's going to cost a lot. A $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 dispute, people are not wanting to hire a lawyer for $5,000. They're just not. So what do? What's their second step after they try to find a lawyer and they can't find someone to work with them for a reasonable price? They go back to the Google machine, right? And they're looking around for self-help information, rules of court, how do I sue someone, whatever it is. They're like, this can't be that complicated, right? I can do this. And maybe they can. They find the right forms, they get 50% of the way there, but then they get stuck. There's so many places that you know these clients, right? They get stuck on, is it the right form? Am I too late? How do I frame this stuff? What do I do when some lawyer is knocking on my door trying to serve me with documents? Whatever that question is, they're looking for, I think, two things: clarity and confidence, right? They want clarity over what's going on, what do I do next? And they want confidence knowing that whatever they're choosing, this is the right next step. Now, that's really hard to do if you don't have legal training and you don't have access to legal professionals. And that's where I think legal coaching and Alexi are both come in. I think these are two approaches that work really well together to improving access to justice for that client, for these types of people that are looking for lower cost help or lower complexity problems.
So let's talk a little now about legal coaching.
I have a legal coaching practice called Butterfly Legal. And the way I got there was I was working at a traditional law firm. My background is in litigation. I did some prosecution work, some criminal defense work, some tax appeals work, a couple of different other areas, ICDC claims, personal injury. It was the traditional law firm environment, right? It was paper files, a lot of staff, brick and mortar building. And I kept meeting these clients that are like, can you just help me with just a little sliver of what I need, just a couple of quick questions. And I couldn't at the time for the cost that they wanted to pay because see about overhead, staff, it's expensive to just get going on a file. You know that, right? So I left that firm and I founded Butterfly Legal with the intention of unbundled legal services. And let me get out there and just see how I can help people. And what I found was that a lot of people were coming to me for small claims coaching specifically. I know there's demand for family law, health, wills, a lot of other services. Small claims, that's the clients that were coming to me. So as I took these files, I started looking at how do I build a practice that will give them what they need at the price that they're willing to pay. And I found that the development went through 3 phases. And I'm not through with 3 phases. So I'm right there with all of you, just trying to build a practice. The first phase was administrative efficiency. And this is what I think of as low-hanging fruit. Online schedulers, payment processors online, intake forms, e-signatures. A lot of you are probably using most, if not all, of those tools. And the goal, of course, is administrative efficiency. Let's just get from I have a problem to I'm working on the problem in as little time with as little cost as possible. I did that. I had a virtual practice out of my condo. I have a big investment in software. That's really my biggest expense. I have some contract paralegals and legal assistants that I work with, but I keep overhead really low. And that worked really well. That took me to phase 2, which I'm still working on. And that's how I came across Alexi. I describe that as work product efficiency. I have your file. I know what your legal problem is. I've got all of your documents. I've got the facts. I'm ready to start working. How do I make that universe of work that I have to do faster, more efficient, quicker, a better experience for the client and for less cost? And there's a few ways that comes into play in my practice. But when I came across Alexi, and when I started using it, my mind was blown by how much it set up my workflow. I'm going to share with you a workflow, a typical workflow for me and how I use Alexi. I'm sure I'm missing a bunch of features. This was out of the box. There's a lot of products that are on the market that are also AI assisted legal research. Alexi is what I've started using, and I think it's a great product. Like, it might be a different fit for all of you. With that said, I think that the workflow is probably quite similar. So, three places, in the Alexi workflow. The first is translating the facts into legal issues. I have a client come through the door and they say, I'm a small business owner, I do renovations. My client stiffed me on a $20,000 bill. What do I do? Breach of contract. Maybe there's some other issues. I plug those facts into Alexi and I say, my client, blah, blah, blah. This is what happened. This is how much. Here's some pertinent facts. What can my client do? What are some causes of action that my client might pursue? I use brainstorm and chat. And so I keep going. I say, of these 4, which do you think is the strongest? And take everything with a grain of salt. We know, talking about AI and looking at how it's not perfect, but it's a really good tool to get those creative juices flowing, to start thinking, I have a real world problem. What does that look like in my legal practice? So then maybe it pops out, breach of contract. Maybe it's the client warranty under the Sale of Goods Act. Maybe deceptive practices under the consumer protection legislation. It'll list out 4, 5, 6, whatever it is, causes of action. And I'll look through those and I'll say, hang on, let's get into a breach of contract. This is step 2. I say, generate a research memo based on this fact pattern. Highlight the leading case law in this area. Or what are some of the arguments that I might make in favor of this particular proposition? Basically, I take these issues that the AI popped out, and then I ask for a more in-depth legal research memo. And the product that it pops out is incredible. I think it's incredible. It's a long form memo with your concise statement of facts that you plug in, the jurisdiction, it's trained on the jurisdiction. It goes through high level, the legal principles that apply. It takes out the relevant paragraphs from the case law and it hyperlinks to the Canley reported decisions.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, something like that. Is it 100% accurate? It's not. This is an unscientific number. I'd say 75 to 80% accurate is what I found in the time that I've been using this. It's more accurate than the memo that I'm sure I produced in my first 2 years of call, 3 years, 4 years. We don't know. It's accurate to a certain degree. What's my takeaway from that? I have this long memo. I'm not going to copy and paste it and send it to the client, obviously, right? I'm not going to send it off without reading it. I read it and then I take out the decisions. That case looks good. Let's dive a little bit deeper. I go back to the chat and I say, tell me more, summarize this case. Maybe I'll actually look at the actual case at some point. A lot of that early research is looking at summaries. How does this connect? What was the plaintiff's position? All the questions that you might ask a student or a junior associate or a research assistant, you can ask the AI, you can ask Alexi, and it will give you a pretty well-reasoned answer with notes that you can check. I'll run several memos. I'll probably run 4, 5, 6 memos on a particular file. And then from there, I get to work and I put together a case assessment or a research memo, whatever it is that I'm working on for the client. As I'm getting ready to explain something to the client, that's my third stage, the third piece of the use case. It's hard to explain some of these things in plain language. It's hard to explain to limitation periods people get and what's the deadline to sue. But if you're trying to explain what's the warranty durability, how long is it supposed to be durable for? It depends. Clients hate hearing that answer. It depends. It depends is shorthand for it's a long story. You want to sit down and pay me for an hour? I'll explain it to you. They don't. So I use AI to explain a concept in plain English. I'll say in the chat, in this, I might copy paste from the decision. Here's the 5 factors that the court's going to consider in deciding whether there is breach of contract in this case. Explain that to my client in an email in plain language. And then you can add extras, right? We all know that. Explain this at the level of grade 8 reading comprehension. Explain this to someone for whom English isn't their first language, right? Explain this to someone who's not familiar with how cars operate, if cars are part of the fact pattern. So I use AI to take the work product that I already have and I massage it into something that is digestible for the client. Now, there's still some crossing the T's and dotting the I's that I do to turn it into a finished product. But that whole workflow that I explained, facts to issues to research to an explanation, speeds up my workflow considerably. I have to share, it's a little awkward to read my Google review, but I'm Lamar's friend, so they're with me. And I'm sharing because I want, if you don't already know, clients are dying for this kind of a legal service. The demand is so high. And I keep getting comments like this, and not all public. But this is a review that my client decided to do publicly. I didn't ask him to do it. I gave him a link, but I didn't coach this. I'm so happy that I found Matt. He's helped me so much with a small claims case while keeping the cost reasonable. Matt quickly accessed my case and got right to the point about the strengths and weaknesses of my case. It got me to focus on what mattered, and he sent me a bunch of pertinent information that I needed. I'm still working on the case, and I will consult with him again when needed. This business model is something I have not seen before, and I believe it's a game changer. I would highly recommend that to anyone that wants to represent themselves, but needs an expert to guide them through the process. I know we can't call each other experts. If anyone's a venture here, you're red flags going off, but the client said it, not me. I just have to share, and again, this review, I'm not sharing it because Butterfly is awesome. I think it is, I built it, but I'm sharing this because this is the feedback that I'm hearing from clients, from people that are asking not only for a lower cost solution to a lower complexity problem, but the speed. They can't wait a year to get through their small claims case. They need some information, and they're also not idiots. I think that we have a tendency in the legal profession to think that clients can't handle some of this stuff. They can't. They need it translated for them. They need the research done. They need to know what applies to their particular cases. And then they need some guidance and some clarity, some confidence. That's what I try to do through legal coaching. I said that there were kind of 3 phases to building Butterfly. I'm still in a second, working on that work product. The next phase, maybe I'll leave that as a bookmark for another time, is I'm building an online course. I'm trying to provide better efficiency, taking all this content that I'm producing and delivering it to clients in a more automated, self-accessible kind of way, with a handoff to live one-on-one concepts, right? Blending the two together. I think that model could work for everybody in this room and for so many more. I think it's a real option to improve access to justice. On that third phase, content delivery, I want to share how I'm using Alexi, not with a specific client file. And I just want to expand the universe of how we might use some of these tools. Do this later. Think of the most common problem that your clients have. Not to call anyone, not to share, but think of the most common problem that your clients come to you with. You're explaining this over and over. Your answers probably are, it depends, right? Depends on factor A, factor B, factor C. Factor A, factor B, factor C, these are avatars. These are, you can imagine the typical client for whom factor A applies. In a divorce case, it might be, are there children? That's factor A, right? So now you've got an avatar of a client with this question who does have children, and another who doesn't. So you have your avatars. Treat them as if they were a real client, right? So we're not waiting for the clients to come to us with these problems. We know what the common ones are. And then that process that I just outlined, the issues, the research, the explanation, make yourself a legal research memo for each of these avatars that you keep in your back pocket. With that material, you can now do drip email campaigns, right? You can share to all of your past clients, hey, here's an issue that you might be thinking about. Here's some free information. You could do webinars. You could write articles. You could get out into the community, whatever communities you're in, whatever communities you care about. If there are legal issues that are important to them and you want to share your expertise with them, use this process and these tools to say something more than it depends. You can provide some better information there. That's what I'm doing to build this online course, to build my marketing materials. I hope to launch early 2025. I want everybody's feedback when that happens, but I also like to be a cheerleader for all of you. If anybody here is looking to improve their legal coaching practice, even if it's not legal coaching, whatever legal practice you have, I'm open to. I want to see more of us practicing in this way, providing better access to justice for more people. Same thing for everybody online. Reach out to us. The Legal Coaches Association, again, thanks to Joanne for all of your work on the last really extensive work professionalizing this type of legal practice. There's a community of us that want to see each other succeed. We do have a discount code for the Legal Coaches Association. I'll share that at the end and by email for those of us online. So I hope that you thought through some of these use cases as it might apply to your own practices. And I hope that we can keep that conversation going. With that, I am sure that what I just talked about was like a sliver of the story here. And I'm really glad that Mark's joining us to expand the universe and talk a little bit. And after that, we'll open it up to a little bit of a group conversation. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, Matt did a fantastic job describing the product. I think so. I'll talk a little bit more about Alexi, but there's a couple points in particular that I think are really important to communicate. We're doing a bit of a circuit right now and doing both online and in person. And there's one kind of key message that I really want to get across. And so I'll get to that and make that a big part of what I want to talk about. But just briefly, just to expand a little bit on what Matt said about Alexi, is we did begin as a research company generating research memos and then expanded more broadly into a litigation workflow product. And so in addition to all the research functionality that we have, our goal is to be able to provide functionality for every single document that is either generated or analyzed in the course of litigation. So probably e-discovery is something we're not going to get to for quite a while. So outside of the e-discovery part, so post-discovery, all these documents, try to understand what they say. We've got great functionality to summarize them, to ask key questions about these documents, what they say, combining that with the legal issues and the law, the legal principles. And again, right through to later this year, I think, might be early next year, we'll have the first pleadings that you can generate based on a lot of these documents, a lot of the legal issues. So really, it can be, again, push a button, get a pleading generated. Lots of reviews still needed. That's always our intention. Right now, our product is only available to lawyers. Recently, actually, we had a non-lawyer try to join, as we do with all non-lawyers. We say, sorry, our service is only for lawyers. And then it was about a week later, that client was in their lawyer's office getting a demo from one of our sales people. First time we've ever done a demo to a lawyer with the client in the room, and the client pulled the lawyer into the demo, but that was great to see. And so Matt also mentioned that clients going to Google. I'm sure lots of people are still going to Google, but almost certainly they're going to ChatGPT, right? I'm quite surprised that there hasn't been ChatGPT, in my mind, is clearly engaging in the practice of law. If you look at it substantively, I'm sure there's some technicality because it's an AI. But that's for a discussion for a different day. Maybe just by I'll paint a bit of picture, and this is getting to the main point that I want to get across. When ChatGPT was launched almost 2 years ago now, for a lot of people, and in many ways, myself included, although we've seen some developments coming along prior to ChatGPT, some of these early large language models that we were working with even, but it was still quite a shock. That product that they put out, I'm sure for many people, when you had the first experience, okay, it's not perfect, but man, it's really quite impressive what this can do. And I think even now, a lot of people looking back, and I was giving a talk at a conference last week, and I asked, how many people in the room think ChatGPT was a step function improvement in AI technology, as compared to maybe it was a threshold moment? We've had continuous improvement, and it was just a threshold moment that now it has brought public attention. And almost everybody in the room that answered, there was many people who abstained, that answered said it was a step function improvement, maybe a flash in the pan, some fundamental architecture discovery, some breakthrough that allowed ChatGPT to come to fruition. And if that is true, then the implication is it might be another decade, it might be another 20 decades where we see another step function improvement. So was that a question, sir?
No, I was just saying transformers, the AI realm, where the step function that allowed that.
Sure. Yeah. So that's a good point. And we can look at technologies. And so a lot of people who would make the argument that yes, there is a step function improvement there. They would point to things like these scaling laws, that the continued improvement of these large language models, you make the models bigger, they keep getting better. And you train them on more data, they keep getting better. But when you plot this out on a chart, they all plateau. And that's what even OpenAI right now, I think just in the past couple of days, have fully acknowledged that we've reached this plateau of these large language models. But what I find most interesting, and why I don't think this was a step function improvement, I think we're on this continuous exponential curve. I think the next several years are going to be even more innovation than the past several years, I think the broad majority view on AI scientists right now is that compression is probably one of the best benchmarks to measure intelligence. How can you compress all of this data, literally measured in bytes from, so there's lots of benchmarks out there. You take this huge corpus of the internet, which models compress all of this data, actually measured in bytes to a smaller model representation of this bigger data. And I think even this is a good definition of intelligence, maybe more generally, certainly artificial intelligence. And if you plot how we've been able to compress data, the compression throughput over the past decades, we're on a pretty straight line on a log chart. So it's continuing to improve exponentially almost every year. And so, yes, there was the Transformer paper 2017 that came out, I believe. There were papers prior to that, right? There's new things, even though these large language models based on this architecture are still the same, we've kind of plateaued scaling them out. No doubt there's new technologies that are coming at some point soon. So if we look at this as like a civilization scaling law, we're following a pretty consistent trend over the past several decades. And I would argue quite clearly that, and it might seem crazy to say, but ChatGPT was really just the Turing test threshold moment. We finally crossed this Turing test, which a lot of people are still unwilling to admit. And it's debatable, certainly. And so another reason why I think even this year we've seen continued rapid exponential improvement in AI, why I think we will continue next year and the year after that, even without another transformer model or similar, is there's a general concept which people are talking more and more about. I'm sure if you haven't heard of this already, you'll start to hear of it more and more. There's this unhobbling concept. What unhobbling is improving the appearance of LLM, the way they function. They appear to be improving, not by improving the fundamental architecture though. So you can make significant improvements without actually improving the core model. And you can do this in three ways. One is a chain of thought. So you can break a complex task up into 5 or maybe 10 smaller tasks. And you can get the model to do each one of those tasks really well. And then when you link them together, you have this complex task that the model can now do, although it's broken up into 10 steps. If you asked it to do that whole complex step in the first time from end to end, it couldn't do it. It would fail every single time. But when you break it up and you have this chain of thought process or reasoning, some people call it, then you can do that. The other thing is scaffolding. So you can have different models one model critiquing the output of another model critiquing the critiquer of the other model. You can have all of these different models working together. It's called a scaffolding architecture. Again, you've seen unbelievable improvements in various ways just through this. And then the last one is tool use. When a customer asks a question, at some point in time, we had, okay, this was the state of this legislative provision at this point in time, but that was the last we had updated. What we put into the product is now in real time, we have agents that scour the internet and find the actual legislation that's relevant in real time in the same way that human lawyer would. And so this is the category of tool use. And so now these agents are getting very good at, in real time, going to the internet, doing things in the exact same way that humans would. And again, when you break up a process like this, going and running a Google search, getting certain links back, maybe changing the keywords, going and doing it again, you break this complex setup into multiple steps. And these models can go and go to the internet in the same way humans would. These are just some of the ways that these tools are just continuing to advance in really significant ways. Since now we don't even maintain a corpus of legislation anymore. Everything is just in real time going to the web to make sure that it's up to date in real time and it gets incorporated right into the research memos. Case law is different, but we don't need to talk about that. Okay, so this understandably might be maybe scary for some people, concerning, no doubt. It does scare me sometimes too with how fast AI is moving. But I really do think there's no need to be scared for one really important reason. These tools are unbelievably easy to use now, and it's way easier than probably trying to get emails set up or using the internet. I wasn't around when they were first coming, but it was easy, I'm sure, for many people when email was coming out or internet coming out, like this is a huge thing getting set up. It's not like that at all. It's so easy to use ChatGPT. I'm sure all of you, many of you have used it before. And you're using modern AI when you do that. Using tools like ours, we try to make it as easy as possible to use. There's free trials. You can decide if it's for you or not. And so I would just say the rate, don't bank on AI not progressing or not continuing to evolve. It's not a skill you need to learn. I highly encourage you to try the products, incorporate them, use them. Again, we've got a free trial. I think it's set at a week. You can extend it to 2 weeks, 3 weeks if you need to figure it out. We want to make sure that it's right for you. Also, we'll tell you what other tools might be available that you might need to go and use if ours isn't working for you. Easy to use, try and use it. It's going to be a bit of a lift at the beginning if you're not already using them, but it's not, what's the saying? AI is not going to replace lawyers, but it'll replace lawyers who don't use, or lawyers who use AI will replace lawyers who don't, something like that. I completely butchered that.
AI is not going to your jobs. I don't think those ever use AI.
Exactly. And this is, and to Matt's point that yeah, 75% of the memos are accurate, 25% are not. I would argue it's less than 25%. But especially now and tomorrow, there's a really big release that we've been working on for months. It's probably going to be well over 80%. This time next year, almost undoubtedly, it's going to be well over 95%. It's just improving that quickly. But that was a tangent. Where was I going with this? Yeah, just use it. It's not going to be perfect, but you'll figure out. Oh yeah, so AI on its own, yeah, it's not going to be perfect. AI and humans together far better than certainly AI on its own, and we believe than human lawyers on their own too. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Open it up for any questions. Yeah.
Very good question. Agents, when you mentioned agents, what
an agent, like artificial intelligence 5 years ago, everybody had this different definition for what an agent is. But what I think the right definition for agent is, now most people agree that data compression is the right definition of artificial intelligence. I fully believe that. Agents, I would say the right definition is if you give a model room to make decisions, and then depending on the outcome of a certain decision, it can go in various ways. So it's given autonomy to take certain actions. And so searching the internet would be one. Yeah. It turns out that most of the time it's just a bunch of models, sometimes hundreds, working together to produce a result. And there are certainly agents in our system, but there's probably hundreds, and they're all designed and trained to do very specific things, and then they work together to do it. This is one of the people who say ChatGPT was just a big improvement because it's already read all the data on the internet. And so if you imagine the analogy, like if you just put a person in a room, they're not going to think their way to ever greater levels of intelligence, right? But if you start to put 3 slightly different people in a room, maybe 10, maybe 1,000, and they debate, they discuss, they learn from each other, then you can start to see how they're actually going to get ever greater levels of intelligence. And that's what's happening with these agents now. Yeah, the question, did I answer the question?
It's specific worker bees, right? They're like an AI worker bee that has specific tasks that it keeps doing. And then the magic, as I understand it, is like these worker bees all talking to each other.
Yeah, so an agent even can be, so people will use it just as, it's not even multi-step. If you say, summarize this case, that can be one call to a large language model with a certain prompt, and it's going to summarize all of this text back in a certain way. One prompt. Some people might refer to that as an agent. We probably wouldn't. Instead, an agent would be an entire pipeline of steps that are set out, and it could include 100 different calls to an LLM, to a large language model. It could include a couple hundred. Sometimes some of the memos that we generate, there's over 200 calls to various LLMs just to produce the single memo.
So like if the fact pattern goes in and you're like, I represent a repairman who has blah, 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 and this is the renovation that he did. One of the agents might be like, what's a renovation? Go figure that. And then the other one might be, what are the most recent decisions that came? Now this agent's going to look at recent decisions. And then a different agent is like, how do we put the hierarchy between court of appeal, trial level, oldest to newest, most relevant to least relevant, so that all these agents are doing little pieces of the puzzle, and then they're coming together to produce the memo at the end.
And remember when I was talking about that chain of thought, if you've got a complex task, the single model can't do the whole thing, but if you break it up into smaller steps, that would be that pipeline that takes care of that. We call that one agent, where each step would be one call to an LLM, but the pipeline that's designed to do that complex task, it's an agent that's designed to do that complex task. Yeah.
And also, you gave a couple of different, I don't know what you're calling, but one of them, scaffolding, and the other one before that. Which one does Alexi?
We use all of these right now to quite a great extent. So one of them, and it's a basic example is so when a question comes in, we can't always rely on the user to state their question exactly perfectly. And even when we help them and rephrase it, is this the question they're asking? And then they confirm and submit it, we still generate another 10, maybe 15 other questions that might be somewhat related to this. And various agents go, so that's one separate agent to generate these questions. It's not good at, that agent is designed just to generate questions. It's not good at doing the research part. And so that's one part of the scaffold, it's generating questions. Now we have other researching agents who take all these questions in parallel and then go and say, actually, even before that, what category does this fall into? Employment, family law, personal injury, and then it can classify it even more. That's another separate agent that's specialized just at doing that. And then even after that, it narrows it down even more to go in and get the right source law that's properly responsive to these questions. And then you have other agents that evaluate, is this case actually relevant? And now the agents that we have that we're working on right now to allow us to be broader concept, but to note up cases in the same way humans would, to look at all the cases that are referenced in a case, then go and read all of those cases, and then go and read all the cases that reference that case as identified, and then to really help have the right cases that are most responsive, most authoritative. But it's a long step of processes. And it's when you put all these, I guess it's a division of labor of these agents that are good at different things. When you put them together, that's the scaffolding approach. Yeah.
I recently heard this statements from AI companies, not companies, but founders saying that we're basically developing like products is basically replacements of the human being, right? And they're just wondering how we do that in the company.
Yeah.
We're selling you a worker as opposed to just subscription, like one seat kind of like.
Yeah, I think jobs generally, the way I understand them, are a bundle of tasks, right? A single job. AI can replace single tasks, but I really don't think it's going to replace jobs. Maybe eventually over time, it starts to do all of these tasks, and then maybe it's somebody else who just oversees AI doings, but I think certainly in legal services, it's a fundamentally human objective. There's individual rights and liabilities at stake. These are human, very human concepts that I think AI needs to stay out of that element of it. Yeah, sorry, yeah.
It's not that, it's been, I haven't said a question.
Oh, okay.
And we have a question online.
Online, yeah.
Oh, okay,
That's okay.
okay.
Sorry, yeah, just to put over Jody and then Hannah and then online.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I wanted to know was, particularly with the agents or tasks around issue spotting, is it able to generate or suggest novel legal arguments? For example, you put in all of your plot stuff, you say, okay, what are the issues here? Is it able to say, based on this hasn't been argued, but it could?
I don't know if we see that in our system right now with the way that we constrain it at least, but you shouldn't bet against it happening. I think one of the, if you're familiar with DeepMind and AlphaGo, there was a documentary that so when computer.
So I was very confused.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, this was, yeah, so I think it was a few years ago, this documentary was released, but the company DeepMind, they were building a computer program to beat the best Go player in the world. You know, Go, it's this very complex game. Unlike chess, where you can record all the possible board configurations in a single database and just go and pick what is that. In Go, there's more board configurations than there are atoms in the universe, so you couldn't even possibly do that. And it was only a few years ago where AlphaGo, that's this AI program, beat the best Alexi, I think his name is, beat the best AlphaGo player in the world. And when you look at the games that they had, there were many moments of creativity from AlphaGo that these were, while AlphaGo was trained on lots of human games and simulated, it played against itself a whole bunch. It had a self-learning concept. None of the best AlphaGo players in the world would have made the moves that the AlphaGo made. And they were, everybody said, that's a very creative, novel, unique, it's not in the data, but it was just learning that this is probably better than everything that we've seen. These models, they generalize. So you take a lot of training data in, but it learns concepts that are not readily apparent from the training data, and they start to generalize over it. And so I believe certainly coming up with novel creative ideas is absolutely not out of the realm of possible. Yeah. Yeah, that answers that question?
Yeah, I have a quick follow-up question.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so you said that it tracks judgment, Matt said that it'll not only give in case law, but it'll actually point to the hyperlink and Hanley, fantastic. Does it offer any trend analysis or mapping about case law and changes in? Best example I can think of is after Beverly McLaughlin was based on Supreme Court decisions got very different. You stop playing the non-unanimous decisions and you start getting these 5-4-1, 2-3-3, these many more alternate opinions. And does it track trends like that is really useful for lawyers to figure out like how persuasive their arguments might be?
It would be worth trying. I don't know. You could ask questions like that, and I wouldn't be surprised if it could be totally wrong, but there would be some interesting things. Oh, this actually does map to what you would expect, and then go and dig in. But it would be interesting to see what the responses are. Yeah.
Really interesting use case.
Yeah.
How has the courts in BC perception of this particular issue changed over years, or how is it different than the courts in Alberta?
Given the recent Uber decision in BC, what is the likelihood of success?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
Interesting.
interesting.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Hi, I have questions which maybe you'll get our face there. But I also hope that I wasn't the only lawyer in the room about something completely differently when you said it out loud.
Oh,
But I guess the question is just very basically, what is the difference between Alexi and a ChatGPT type model?
yeah. ChatGPT, a couple things. It's not designed to be specific to lawyers, legal professionals, and that gets reflected in a whole bunch of things. One, just the core intelligence components of it. So understanding certain cases are more authoritative than others. ChatGPT and the OpenAI company, the way they train the large language, that's one of the many limitations when you start to go industry specific. For example, that's one example. That's something that's really important for us to figure that out. And so through these scaffolding and various other processes, we can solve for that. And there's so many other examples, but
Is
yeah.
there a difference in the information that ChatGPT versus Alexi has access to?
I would, well, that's probably not, but there definitely is a difference in the information that we prioritize. So we would, if you were to ask ChatGPT an answer to a legal question, it might point to a blog post. Sometimes those are helpful, but we're going to point to primary and secondary sources, mostly primary sources. And you would do that for a lawyer, but you might not do that for the general public who needs a question. So yeah, that would be, yeah, just again, there's a bunch of other examples too on how they're different. But the core technology is very similar. These are generative AI models that can write coherent sentences. Yeah.
But I think most importantly, I'm not sure if this is where your question is coming from, but there's a lot of concerns from lawyers about AI hallucinating cases that don't exist.
Yeah, okay, well, great point. Yeah, this is another example, not just the authoritativeness, but our answers are grounded in, so a large language model, yeah, word by word is forming coherent sentences, and it goes back to the creativity question too, that sometimes they're so creative, they give you citations that were in the future, right? LexisNexis had this famous example, actually, that a screenshot on LinkedIn of a case published in the year 2025.
There was just like a page review of the next.
Yeah, I saw that. I haven't got into that yet. So
yes, that's where my question was.
Okay,
My
great.
experience, ChatGPT is very terrible.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So a couple of, probably the most important way I'll explain this is so what we do first is to answer a question is we use retrieval models, which is basically search models. We go to a database of case law that we control, that we host. We pull the cases that map to CanLII. We pull the cases that our models identify are responsive to a question. And we validate this. We do several things to try and validate, are these the right cases? And then we use the model now to say, based on the content of these cases, and don't even summarize them, try and preserve the original statements in the text, but only use those to state the answer. Don't make anything else up. And and take several steps to do this, then you don't get it making things up. You don't get the models making things up. It's only going to answer questions based on the content you provided. The alternative approach, which is I'm pretty sure what Lexis has done, is you get the model to write the answer, and then you go and fetch cases now that are related to different sections of this answer. And I think this is what Westlaw did for a while. I don't know if they do that anymore. And so this is the step that we use is retrieval augmented generation. So it's the retrieval part. That's what you get the cases, and then you have the generation to answer the question. They would do a generative augmented retrieval. So you generate the answer, it can make up a bunch of things, and then they go and try and find cases that are related to the content, like a search after that. And that's why you get a bunch of really bad answers. Yeah. Yeah.
So what this person has asked is, how effective is AI when dealing with applicability of foreign court decisions in Canada, especially in cases of family matters from civil law jurisdictions? So I guess, can it pick up like cases from outside of Canada?
We don't. So we have separate user accounts for Canada and the US right now. And those are the only two jurisdictions we operate in. And yeah, if you're in Canada, it's only going to look at Canadian primary law, some secondary sources. And then likewise in the US, whatever state you're in, it's just looking at those states.
If you have a Canadian account, can you access, or do you have to?
Right now, no, because that request comes up so infrequently, but it's possible. As we work with the larger firms more and more, we get this request more, but yeah, not right now. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I understand some of the issues with kind of models like ChatGPT in the past have been that it, starts with really just saying case law because it's supposed to give the person asking something that it feels was helpful, and if it can't find it, it'll kind of create it.
Right.
Those things. So in terms of the AI legal research, is there kind of mechanism within it that tells you ultimately is this a good position to have? Because if you're going into it with an IR review, in this case, presumably a lawyer will tell you, you can, but you should settle.
Right. Right.
And to be able to kind of here's the lawyer, but ultimately that's likely not to work. And here's the stronger position you get a part of the
Yeah.
factor of those kind of, I guess.
Yes, right now, our products are probably, it's just gonna give you the primary sources and the way it's, and not to say it wouldn't be possible, I don't think, but we definitely leave that kind of analysis up to our customers and users. But just first on the hallucination point, the way we think of hallucinations broadly as a category of errors is it's an inaccuracy stated with confidence. So it's stated that, yes, this is true, but it's wrong. Because you can think of an error, but if it was stated, this might not be right, but we think it might be this, that's probably not an error. We think it might be this, but it might not be right. And if it turns out to be right, and then the LLM can be like, well, I said it might not be right. Maybe that's not hallucinating. So I do think it's a combination of it being wrong, but confidently asserted. And so it's not just with respect to cases. It can be with any statement of truth, right? That can be, so a really important thing that we put in is if you're not sure of the answer, say you're not sure. And so we help control the models so that they would say something like, might not be right, but based on this, maybe, yeah. Okay. Any other questions? You find, yeah?
I do. I don't know if this is already touched on already, but does Alexi, if you get, and this has happened at my firm, you get opposing counsel sent to 20 cases they're relying on. Can you throw it all into
Yep.
Alexi and get them to summarize the whole case?
Yep,
Like each
exactly.
one?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, up to 2,000 pages per document. Now you can get comprehensive summaries of each document. I think it's up to 10 documents at a time you can upload, but you can upload 10 and keep going. And
Cool.
yeah, that was a couple weeks ago. It was just finally released. So
Okay, cool.
yeah.
How do you work with lawyers to help them educate their clientele that, hey, we're using AI now, and we're using it efficiently, but also educate them to have the knowledge to not, if they get a client that comes in and might know a little bit more about AI than they do, give them the confidence to use the AI and educate the AI to their clients.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't, we interface so rarely with clients that I think the only time it's really come up is when there was a conference in New York City. It was an in-house counsel conference, and there was a bunch of private practice lawyers at the big firms. And there was basically an argument that we just watched of in-house being like, when is AI going to lower our fees? And that's really what it comes down to. So I think a lot of these firms are just trying to figure out how is this going to impact our business and the pricing and all of these things. And so I think a lot of people are still trying to figure it out. I don't know if that answers your question, but I probably don't have an answer to your question.
No, that's okay. I just, like, and in your sales cycle, you've been around 7 years. How long did it take from, hey, we're Alexi and we want to educate you, to people coming to you? Like how long was the outbound until it started bringing inbound?
Yeah, it's still mostly an ad-driven referral acquisition process for all of our customers right now, and still way more ad-driven than referrals. And we're still in the early adopter phase of generative AI adoption within law firms. Like when you think of the 100,000 lawyers in Canada, the 1 million or so in the States, there's still so much to do and grow into. And also the vendors and our company and they all need to continue to mature, continue to make the products better. And like this, we're really just at the very beginning of what's possible, what we can do. And so I'm super excited for it. I think if you're a lawyer working with generative AI right now, you have a head start because most lawyers aren't. And there's a lot of firms rapidly getting into it and adopting it, but it's still the early adopters that are using it the best. Yeah.
Matt said it saved him considerable time. Do you guys have any stats on how much you think it saves a lawyer?
Yeah, I think we're
Yearly or whatever basis, yeah.
It definitely depends on the work, the type of work. But yeah, I think we're in I've heard from 10 to 2 hours. So it could be like a 1/5. Often we would hear something like that. I think that's often what we would quote. And in general, yeah.
We have a question online. Does Alexi have ability to search a precedent database for various areas of law, wills, leases, separation agreements, etc.?
So no, currently no. But if you have a firm database, you can upload that database and search across your own firm's database. So you can create a particular matter within Alexi, and that can be a precedent folder. and you can ask questions about that entire folder, and you can have hundreds, if not thousands, you can have thousands of documents in there. And you can retrieve the documents, you can access that document all through a chat interface.
So it'd be like you'd upload like your PDFs of anything you've gotten from opposing counsel or your own firm and into Alexi, and then create a little database from there?
Yeah, or if it was just your own firm, yeah, you can upload it. And if you do have bulk uploads, we can do that outside of the interface so that it automatically appears. And yeah, you can. It really does change document management systems also. And if you think of document management systems in the age of AI, they're very different, and that's what we're starting to see. And as the entire workflow gets integrated into a single product, and so if you look at the new Alexi interface, you've got matters, which are like Slack channels, maybe on the left-hand side, organizing work. And then you have a main chat interface where collaboration can happen. Right now, it's just with a single user and agent, but we have plans for many users within a chat, also human users, not just agents. And then on the right-hand side is all the documents organized in the same way a directory might be. And there's lots of work we can do there so it's a combination of all these tools that document management system, collaboration, interfacing with AI, Slack, ChatGPT, all of these things combined into a single workflow product. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for having us. This is the most amazing law office I've ever been at. I love it. Coming from Toronto, you don't get this in Toronto. But yeah, thanks for having us, and yeah, appreciate it.